What if the world as you know it changed overnight? What if a decision, made in the quiet corridors of power, unleashed America's most powerful conventional weapons, pushing the Middle East to the brink of a full-blown war? This isn't a movie script. This is the story of Trump's secret war plan. Stay with us to understand the secret meetings, the advanced military tech, and the geopolitical chess game that unfolded while the world slept. Have you ever wondered what it looks like when a global superpower decides to flex its military muscle in the most dramatic way possible? We often hear about diplomatic talks and sanctions, but what happens when those options are deemed insufficient? President Donald Trump, a leader who promised to end America's endless wars, just took an action that could ignite the most significant conflict of the 21st century. He authorized a massive airstrike on Iran, a move his four predecessors deliberately avoided, fearing it would drag the United States into an unwinnable quagmire. This decision wasn't just a reaction. It was a calculated high-stakes gamble with potentially world-altering consequences. So, what truly led to this historic and controversial military operation? Was it a necessary evil to prevent a nuclear threat or a reckless roll of the dice? The story begins not in the heat of battle, but in the quiet, tense atmosphere of presidential retreats and classified briefings. For weeks, a storm was brewing. In early June, during a weekend at Camp David, CIA Director John Ratcliffe presented President Trump with intelligence suggesting that Israel was on the verge of launching its own imminent attacks against Iran. The fuse had been lit earlier, in April, when Trump issued a 60-day ultimatum to Iran to negotiate a new nuclear deal, simultaneously asking Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to hold off on any military action to allow diplomacy a chance. But diplomacy faltered, the clock ran out, and 61 days after Trump's warning, Israel initiated a series of unprecedented attacks targeting Iran's nuclear program and its military leadership. Initially, the Trump administration publicly distanced itself, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio labeling the Israeli actions as unilateral. However, behind the scenes, a different narrative was taking shape. As Israel's campaign continued, Trump grew convinced that the United States had to join in. The final impetus came after European leaders met with their Iranian counterparts and concluded that Tehran would not negotiate unless the U.S. forced Israel to stop its attacks, a demand Trump was unwilling to meet. To mask the impending American intervention, the White House engaged in a deliberate strategy of misdirection. On a Thursday, the press secretary announced that Trump would take 2 more weeks to decide on a course of action. This was a smokescreen. The public timeline of 2 weeks lasted a mere 48 hours. By Friday evening, as Trump casually mingled with guests, including OpenAI CEO Sam Altman at his New Jersey golf club, the wheels of war were already in motion. At midnight, the operation, codenamed OperationMidnightHammer, commenced. Stealth B-2 bombers took off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, embarking on an 18-hour-plus mission, the longest for these aircraft in over 2 decades. This was no ordinary military strike. The U.S. unleashed its most powerful non-nuclear weapon, the 13,600-kilogram GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, or MUP, a bunker-busting bomb so massive only the B-2 can carry it. This weapon was specifically chosen for its ability to penetrate the heavily fortified underground Fordow fuel enrichment plant, a target Israel could not reach on its own. The attack was a symphony of military precision involving more than 125 aircraft, including refueling tankers, reconnaissance planes, and fighter jets. To ensure the element of surprise, the operation began with a submarine launching over 24 Tomahawk cruise missiles at surface infrastructure at the Isfahan nuclear site around 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Then, between 6:40 p.m. and 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time, under the cover of darkness in Iran, the B-2 bombers delivered their devastating payload, striking 3 key nuclear facilities: Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. The entire operation was conducted with what military officials called the highest level of operational security. The planning was so secret that top congressional Democrats were only notified after the bombs had been dropped. U.S. forces entered and exited Iranian airspace without being fired upon, suggesting Iran's air defense systems were either unaware or unable to respond. 24 hours after schmoozing at his golf club, Trump was in the White House Situation Room, wearing a red "Make America Great Again" hat, watching the real-time footage of the strikes. A few hours later, he addressed the world. "Tonight, I can report to the world that the attacks were a spectacular military success," he declared, calling for Iran to make peace or face even greater attacks. The stated goal was clear: to destroy Iran's uranium enrichment capability and eliminate the nuclear threat from what he termed the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Officials insisted this was a limited operation, not an attempt at regime change. They even communicated this to Iran through diplomatic back channels before the attack. But how can you drop the world's largest conventional bombs on a nation's most prized strategic assets and not expect it to be seen as an act of war? Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi immediately condemned the strikes as a grave violation of international law and warned of lasting consequences. While Iranian state TV tried to downplay the damage, claiming the facilities had been evacuated, the message from the government was one of defiance, reserving all options to defend its sovereignty. The international reaction was swift and divided. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres expressed deep alarm at the dangerous escalation. American Democrats were furious, accusing Trump of misleading the country and bypassing Congress to risk a disastrous war. Republicans, however, praised the move as a prudent response to Tehran's belligerence. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, unsurprisingly, lauded the attack, confirming it was conducted in full operational coordination with his country. This leaves us with the most critical and controversial question: what now? Trump is betting that he has so severely crippled Iran's nuclear program and its regional power that it will be unable to retaliate effectively. He's gambling that the 40,000 U.S. troops stationed across the Middle East are safe from Iranian missiles and that a weakened Tehran can't resort to its playbook of terrorism and hostage-taking. But there is a terrifying alternative. Critics, like Senator Mark Warner, argue that Trump acted without a clear strategy, ignoring intelligence that Iran hadn't even decided to build a bomb. The risk is that Iran, feeling backed into a corner, follows the path of North Korea. Instead of capitulating, a humiliated Iran might decide that possessing an actual nuclear arsenal is its only guarantee against future attacks. The strikes, intended to end a nuclear threat, could inadvertently create a nuclear-armed state, leading to the very catastrophe the world has sought to avoid for decades. In the end, the raid on Iran's nuclear facilities, OperationMidnightHammer, stands as one of the most consequential decisions of the Trump presidency. It was a demonstration of overwhelming military power, executed with chilling precision. The operation successfully targeted and inflicted what U.S. officials call extremely severe damage on Iran's key nuclear sites, particularly the supposedly impenetrable Fordow facility. The core of this event is a monumental gamble. President Trump has wagered that a decisive, powerful blow will force Iran to the negotiating table from a position of weakness, permanently ending its nuclear ambitions. He believes this show of force will deter retaliation and bring peace through strength. However, The world holds its breath, waiting to see Iran's response. The attack could backfire spectacularly, pushing Iran to abandon all international treaties and pursue a nuclear bomb in secret, sparking a regional arms race and a far more dangerous, prolonged conflict. This single act has placed the United States, and indeed the world, on a knife's edge between a claimed spectacular military success and a potential abyss of unpredictable warfare. The coming weeks will reveal whether Trump's controversial gambit was a masterstroke of deterrence or a catastrophic miscalculation. Thank you for joining us on US and World Politics Decoded. If you found this analysis insightful, please hit the like button, share this video with others, and be sure to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss an in-depth report on the events shaping our world. We'll see you next time.